Well, folks, we're back. We're going to have some fun tonight. The Chiefs have been on an upswing. We're going to talk about where they're at, where they're going, and how they can get there, particularly with a couple of key players. And we're going to answer what we think are the pertinent questions. Seth had a great piece this week. I did a big film review that actually took me a lot of time. So we're going to get into it now and go over it all with you guys. Welcome to RGR Football. What's up, Rogue Nation? This is Seth Kaiser. I'm the schlub you know as Ryan Tracy. How are you guys? Hope you're doing
every
well.
time.
Right?
I will never point the right direction.
I still don't do it. It's only been 17 years I've been doing this. You never know. How you doing, man? It's been a weird week, huh?
It has been a weird week, but I got to see the Chiefs win a game on Sunday. Got to eat my weight in barbecue at Joe's on Saturday. Got fed tremendous food in the Arrowhead parking lot on Sunday. Life is good, man. You know, can't complain.
I am glad to hear it. Always a good thing when the trip turns out well.
Yes.
It's gonna be fun. And I feel like the next trip will be even better because I feel like this team is about to get on an upswing. Folks, we hope that you feel the same way. If you do, like, sub, hit the bell if you're new to us, because we do this on Thursdays. Unlike all the other things that we do that you can see all week long, we have content for you all the time, including from Stevie Keys and Gooch, who are in the chat. Aaron Morrow, our fearless moderator. It's not just me and Seth.
Aaron, who blew me off on Sunday, let me tell you. That's exactly how that story went. It's exactly how that story went. And anything Aaron says in the comments is just not true. It's just not true. He blew me off completely. I cried. I was, Aaron, please, could you just meet up with me? And, it was terrible. Also, I saw a request from someone who asked me to do something that I did during Times Hours. Do you want to hear you want to hear my impression of Steve Spagnuolo with his game plan for Jordan Love?
Absolutely.
You blitz all night. Because he was just like, guys, what we're gonna do? So we're gonna send 6, then we're gonna send 5, then we're gonna send 7, then we're gonna send 6. Coach, are we gonna rush 4?
Nope.
Sit down. Sit down. You will not get on the field. And so, anyway, that was something I did on Times Hours, because that's really what it was. It was just like, hey, they're dropping back to pass. You know what we should do? We should blitz.
Right. Confuse the rookie. And honestly, it was functional. I said a couple weeks ago, if you can't get there at 4, you got to send 5. So I think that would be blitzing like that all the time. I mean,
of course you would. And Sean, no tie. Nope. I'm a government worker, so I actually had the day off today.
Terrible.
And so here I am without my tie. I feel very underdressed. But yeah, it's something that you can do against a young quarterback. You can say, look, this guy hasn't seen a lot at the NFL level. So we're going to throw a bunch at him and see if he can beat us. And sometimes they can. And when they can, things go very badly. And he made a few throws that really would have taken advantage of it and all that stuff. But overall, he didn't know what to do with 7 or 8 guys coming his way. He just didn't understand the protections, didn't understand how to get to his hot route. He just didn't. I'm surprised Devontae Adams didn't pull him aside and be like, look, bro, you and me just have a signal. Yeah. You and me just have a signal. If you think they're blitzing, I'll run a quick in route and it'll probably be open. And it probably would have been
all day long.
Yeah. And it's just tough to make adjustments like that. But yeah, it was a really fun game, really good time. We were only in Kansas City for a total of 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of driving.
That's only like 4 meals at Joe's then.
I ate so much at the one. So we got to Kansas City at about 7 p.m. I ate so much food. For those who have asked, it was a Z-Man on Texas toast, a pound of burnt ends, fries, potato salad, and the dessert they have currently, which is bread pudding.
Oh, so you went pretty light.
Oh yeah, I wasn't able to finish all the burnt ends, and I only ate like 2/3 of the potato salad, but everything else went down the hatch.
Burnt ends
Well,
first.
they're so good. Well, I mean,
First.
that's why I got a pound, so I knew that I could eat as much of them as I wanted. And it was a particularly good Z-Man. I mean, a Z-Man's always good, right? For some reason, I think they just had it was even better than normal.
Wow.
Now, I
As
don't
you
know if that's because I hadn't eaten all day. That was potentially part of it.
could be why. You never
Also, a
know.
bunch of people made comments that I've lost weight, and yes, I have lost weight. Thank you for noticing, people. Briscoe took a picture of me holding up my meal, calling me more machine than man. So,
Aw, that's awesome. Good for you. Well done.
thank you.
I want to say before we go much further, the lack of a veteran quarterback was a problem for Green Bay last week. A lack of veterans for us would be a problem too. And so if you are a veteran, I hope you enjoy your day. Thank you for everything you've done for us and me and my family.
Yes,
But I always feel bad about that. A lot of my buddies that served, they're like, they're always thinking about the guys that are out there now too.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hear this or you're watching this or whatever happens, if you're out there around the world, we thank you as well. So you'll be a veteran at some point. So we're just going to go ahead and thank you now. That's the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big day. It's something that in my family for generations, it's been something that we always revolve around. So I had the opportunity to play football out of college, so I took that opportunity. And I'm one of the few in my family who didn't serve, so it's still ingrained. I just wanted to put that out there. So that said,
Yes.
if you guys want to support them, please do. Put it in the chat. I'll try to throw them up here when I start looking at the chat here in a second. If you want to support us, you can do that as well. There's super chats. There's the gear store. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do here. If you do, please ask a question. We will try to get to it. This is not the Q&A show, just to remind everyone that is on Mondays, but we will try to get some of them tonight. But we have a good topic to get to.
A very good topic.
As I start to scroll through here, I just want to make sure there isn't anybody who's like leading us right into the topic perfectly. Now I see a bunch of wide receiver questions. No, you guys, I haven't seen anything about Reynolds being claimed yet.
Reynolds was claimed.
He was claimed. Okay.
By the Lions. Yep.
Okay, so he's a Lion. I don't think Deshaun is going to play for the Raiders, but I could be wrong. We will see. I think it's going to be a game time decision is what I last read. And I know you guys are either really happy or really upset about OBJ. So, hey, just don't worry about it. We'll get to it.
Oh, did Odell play in week 1?
I don't recall. I want to say no, but there's somewhere that I'm sure I can look that up, but I'm just not going to.
I'm just curious because let me just say this. I'm bummed the Chiefs missed out on Odell. I think they could use another wide receiver. I mean, there's a reason why they signed Josh Gordon. They're trying to find someone who is average to above average in terms of basic wide receiver stuff at that third spot. Pringle hasn't been able to do it. Robinson, just a quiet storyline this year is that Robinson hasn't stepped up quite as much this year as he has in years past. He's been able to be almost an average type guy in some situations where he could step in, beat man coverage occasionally, not as much as you'd like, but enough maybe to get by when Watkins was hurt. And that hasn't been the case this year.
I have an idea.
Ooh, I would love to hear your idea. But they need an average guy because Hill, Kelsey, they're both awesome. We understand Kelsey's clearly playing hurt, still awesome, but you can't have awesome nothing. And right. Hardman, I've been a Hardman defender as much as anyone else. For one, he's clearly got the yips with his hands. And he can do a lot of valuable things for the Chiefs offense, but running wide receiver routes and getting open against press man coverage is not one of them. And that's what they need. So I get why people are upset about Beckham. At the same time, there is, and I know for you didn't want Beckham in Kansas City, but the amount of angst has been, I think, a little much. Maybe. Just it's not like to me, I was more bothered when they missed out on Julio.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I think Beckham, there's every chance he's only 29. There's every chance he goes to a new place and just crushes. He seems like a guy a lot like Moss, who maybe some of the mental side of it could really affect him a lot. And maybe he's not a guy that can necessarily push through. when the mental stuff's going on. And there's no shame in that. Not everyone can, right? I mean, there are some people that can be completely unaffected and whatever, and there's some people that can't. And that's just how it is. So I just, it would have been nice. But honestly, I think people are starting to discover that while playing with Patrick Mahomes is a sell, it's not the end-all be-all, and players generally want to play on the coasts.
Yeah, there's a couple of things around that, but let me go back to my idea. You haven't invested enough attention in the guy that you already signed, let alone another guy who's starving for attention at all times. So here's something. Why don't we target Josh Gordon 10 times in the game and see what happens? Why don't we just feed him a little bit and see what happens? And then if you're still upset, then we can go look for another, prima donna that has to get the ball all the time. Because I think part of this equation, quite frankly, was that OBJ did not want to come to Kansas City because he would be directly compared to Tyreek Hill every 5 seconds, and he would not come up well in that comparison.
But that'll probably happen with Cooper Kupp too, you know? So you think that it mattered to him, or do you think like he saw it in both of them, but then the other stuff with LA kind of won out?
I think it was all about him and his share, either money or target share. 2 things.
Sure.
I like you said, I did not want him there. I could see how they made an inquiry. I could see what he could bring to the field, but what he's brought to the field in Cleveland has been suspect at best. It's been inconsistent left and right, and he's got injury history. So, like you said, if you have nothing and that's the guy that you're counting on, if he does get injured, you're right back where you started from. So,
right, there's a lot of risk there.
There is. Stevie, thank you for saying what I was saying. Sorry I missed it. I should have just put your thing up there before. So, gracias. That said, this is not to bash on OBJ. I think it is intriguing, though, that basically the fact that they made an offer does tell you that the front office in particular, and probably Andy Reid as well, is aware of what's going on and that they do need something. They need a spark from somewhere. And maybe that was it. Maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe somebody internally will actually grow a spine and do something about it. I don't know.
It's they obviously knew that they needed another receiving guy. I mean, there's a reason why they've been linked to lots of people, right? And I know that people are upset they didn't get Juju. They didn't, they're obviously trying to address a need. They need one more, even average guy who can get open against press coverage, against man coverage, left on an island. Sammy, for everything else, he was that guy. And did he contribute as much as I would have liked? No, mostly because of injuries. But when he was fully healthy, the Chiefs offense was always at its best when Watkins was fully healthy. And even when he was playing and wasn't fully healthy, I think he affected how teams played them a little bit. Yeah. And you see some of the value in that. I think with Gordon, I'm curious because he showed some functionality for sure, like that average to above average in 2019. One thing I would say, being there live, he looks slow. And he's going to need to learn to compensate in other ways. And I don't know how the Chiefs have time to wait for that.
Yeah. Okay.
And now, but again, that could be wrong. It's not like I was watching the whole game. It is a bummer that a couple times he's been targeted in semi-contested or contested situations. He's dropped the ball. And it's like, dude, you gotta just grab those opportunities. But they need someone to step out. They're begging Hardman to do it. They are begging him to take that. And I think if he hasn't seized it by now, it's probably unlikely that he will. Like, I'm comfortable. I wasn't ready to bury him 2 years in. We'll see what happens year 3. But, I mean, once you're 2.5 years in and you got the same player that he's been, odds are that's who he's going to be.
Yeah. And there's no way that he's leaving, you guys. He's going to be on his rookie contract. He will fulfill that. And I'm guessing he'll be allowed to leave at that point. Someone will sign him and they'll get a modest compensatory pick for him, is my guess. We'll see what happens. Because I think of the right offense and the right toolkit, he can probably do more in a designed play scheme than it is for him having to try to be an equal wide receiver and play all the positions and do all the things. So
sure.
That said, if he lands with the Saints, I think you'll see a little bit something different. But he's not the only Gordon that we have to talk about real quick before we get into our main topic, which is Mahomes. Cheeseball, I'll tell you exactly what it is. I think he can help every single game because if nothing else, you saw in one contest that Melvin still has get off that's comparable or better than Frank Clark's, that he still has moves that he can utilize, and that he still has a nasty attitude. And that alone draws, pass blocks.
Ingram played well. He was noticeable, and that's, I mean, what was he? It was like 4 or 5 days before the game he came in, and so they obviously didn't play him. He played quite a few snaps.
Yeah, 29 total.
Which, I mean, for considering you joined the team that week, that's a buttload of snaps. That was very much like you're a veteran. We think you know how to do this, and he does.
Yep.
He was only, I think it was only like 12 or so pass rush snaps he was in on.
21.
But say again?
21.
21 pass rush snaps?
Yep.
That is different from what I read.
I'll pull it up. I did all the stats.
Maybe
that's important.
Yeah, no, it's definitely important. And so maybe they threw him in a lot of obvious passing situations. I just know, you're not going to get a huge sample size, but he had a couple pressures and he had a couple wins. And those things are different. And being able to help crush the pocket a little bit, that's a big deal. But the judge's question here is an interesting one. Well, there's a lot going into it because the other thing, Ingram's arrival helped. Frank Clark playing at a high level recently helped. Nice, thank you.
Let me see if I can clean this up for you too. Hold on.
And so because it's just a whole different thing. And so one thing that people should know, because what they're going to look at, they're going to see Clark's and they're going to say, oh, pressure rate of 10%. That kind of sucks. You got to remember, when you're in on every pass rush snap, essentially, you end up in a bit of a different situation because there's going to be bootlegs the opposite direction of you. You're more likely to be on the field for goofy snaps, right? Neutral snaps, as it were. But Ingram did a nice job. Clark's been playing better. And then Jones, who was just phenomenal, he just took over some drives against the Browns. Now you've got 3. And that was the hope with Reed, right?
And that's why they're all here. Yeah, this is your front.
Yep, and Reed has some good snaps every now and then. I personally think on obvious passing downs, they should really start to think about throwing Tershawn Wharton out there because I think he wins at a slightly higher rate. Although Reed wins in a different way that can be more of a sum of the parts.
What really surprised me is when he was in there with Chris next to him, he was still getting in passing downs. I saw at least 3 of them, and it blew me away. Like, why would you ever double him out of the 2 of them?
Definitely. And I think part of that is an alignment thing. And part of that, couldn't explain the rest of it. But he's obviously still drawing some attention, and he does make double teams work for it.
Yeah.
He's a high motor guy. He doesn't just kind of whatever once, he hits with a double. He'll force him to work for it a little bit, won't let him go help other guys. So his effective double team number, I think, would be pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's having 3, that's a big deal. Now, having 4 obviously is even better. If you can get one guy that's just average, if Reed can just drag himself up to average there, that's a huge deal. Similarly to the receiver thing, I've compared those 2 a lot in terms of your sum of the parts changes with numbers. You are better off in some ways. Now, it's more so with pass rush than with wide receivers. But, like, if you could have 4 above average wide receivers or 1 superstar and 3 guys who are subpar, I'm taking the 4 above average. Now, it's almost impossible to build teams that way because you pay, like, star money for above average players usually. Right. So teams can almost never build that way. That's how everyone wants to build because they think, like, well, then we'll just give them slightly above average money. It's like, that's not how that works in free agency. But it becomes a sum of the parts thing. And I'm excited to see it because even though they were blitzing a ton, which kind of affects what you can really see from the pass rush, the guys who are rushing forward. Because sometimes, so like a guy like Reed, when they're blitzing, he's going to be more setup guy, right? Yeah. His job is to barrel into the blockers and let Tyrann Mathieu or Dan Sorensen, sorry if that gave everyone a little bit of a moment there, that it's his job to barrel through and cause chaos and eat up blockers on blitzes especially. So in a game like that, you're not going to see as many stats from a guy like Reed. Now with Jones, they still want him to just try to beat his guy because you don't tell a shark not to shark. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm really encouraged. And one thing to take away from that game is Obviously, the blitzing stuff was a young quarterback. They're not going to be able to get to Derek Carr the same way. And so, although they used to, but once Gruden got into town after that first year, they really started to figure out Spagnuolo stuff. Gruden had Spag's number. That's why I'm curious what happens this Sunday. Because anytime they blitzed, it got blocked out. Like, I mean, and then he just.
I put that more on Rodney Hudson in particular than Gruden, to tell you the truth.
That was so maybe we'll see something different here because Hudson's great with protections.
He is.
So and maybe Carr has really grown that much too over the years. I mean, see, I kind of like Derek Carr. I'm sorry, he's placed me over the top with some of his quotes on how to deal with certain things in life, and I appreciate. He seems to be a really, really decent human.
I used to think that until the victory lap game. The little stream he did on his channel that night was condescending as all get out. I never heard him sound so arrogant. It was crazy.
Everyone loves a little friendly trash talk.
Yeah, not me. Down you go.
So the one thing that I was going to say though, the blitzing stuff, you can't necessarily take a ton away from the pass rush there. Other than, Spags got his groove back a little bit, which is nice to see. But the bigger thing you can take away is the front four was able to get pressure on some snaps against a good offensive line.
Yeah.
And that matters.
And all those numbers to me add up to, like you said, if Reed can just get back to medium, get back to an average player, now all of a sudden that's a good front. And I think all those numbers, particularly Clark that's 3% under Clark's normal pressure rate. And I get what you mean about some funky plays, but I don't buy into it that should be that much diminished. It's more opportunities to get pressure in my mind. So his job is to go pressure the quarterback. I don't want to hear this, he played too many snaps to do it. No, that is incorrect for me. But I think all those things are steps that look like they have plenty of room to improve. And I think if they do that, this could be a taking off point. But that leads us to Judge's question. If they do, is there a scenario where you see Frank coming back?
Not on the current deal he's on.
Right. No, I mean at all.
I mean, here's the problem. Let me grab his contract here. I think for one thing, I think the team knows more about what's been going on with him health-wise the last 2 years. I don't know if his play is held quite as much against him as it is by the fan base who doesn't know. In some ways, I wonder if Clark made a really interesting comment where he talked about the fact that he had to realize that playing through injury was not helping the team. And that playing at less than 100% was actively hurting the team because he couldn't play at a level that would help. And he even commented, I've never really dealt with injuries before in my career. And he didn't. For 4 years, I think, with the Seahawks, he was hardly ever hurt.
Right.
At least not in a way where he could maybe play through. I think if he did miss games, it was like you're out. I mean, these are.
Yeah, if I remember at Michigan, he had one little stretch, I think, where he was significantly hurt. And that's why.
And so I wonder, that's just such an interesting and to me kind of eye-opening thing to where, because since he's come back this time, he's been a lot better. And it makes you wonder whether or not there were times he could have taken a week or two and come back healthy and been better, but instead playing through and remaining at that 70% or whatever, how much that impacted things. It reminds me of Lucas Niang's decision his final year in college to play through that injury. And he had to completely alter his slide. Well, he couldn't slide. Yep. He was backpedaling.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered, because Niang went into that last year as there were conversations about him as being the top-rated tackle in college. And by the time he was out, there were some injury concerns and stuff. He still got drafted fairly high. But it's just an interesting thing to think about what the dynamic might be, what might the conversation be about Frank Clark if he hadn't tried to play through injury.
Yeah.
Either way, not on this contract. I mean, his cap hit next year is supposed to be $26.3 million.
Yeah.
That's quarterback money. Well, not for long.
Yeah. You could drop a year or two, do a 4-year extension with those phantom years at the end, but you're still going to eat money that way. It's best just to cut ties. And if you really want him back, just do a fresh deal half the cost.
They really could. And I mean, everyone's going to know it. What their starting point, my assumption is going to be is, let me think, 13. Their starting point is going to be about 13.4.
Yeah.
Because that's the dead money amount.
Yep.
And his agent's going to say, look, y'all are going to have this amount of money accounting for him this year regardless. So if we're going to rearrange something, we got to rearrange something. Yep. And for him, it would make sense to want some sort of bonus. One thing that would actually make sense if they were going to try to keep him around would be to rework him like a completely reworked deal to where it paid him that 13.4 in salary rather than a bonus to where it's not hurting you long term. But that's the problem because that contract is so big. It puts you in a weird spot. I would not be in favor of bringing Clark back for remotely the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And I appreciate Clark probably more than a lot of fans do because I do think he brings some stuff, and I think he's been trying to play hurt. But you can't pay him star money to not be a star because even these last 3 weeks when he's played really, really well, I know his PFF grades have been like star level. I think he's definitely impacted games way above average, good even. But I'm not seeing like, Pete Khalil Mack, Von Miller, Nick Bosa type stuff. And that's what he's getting paid to be.
Exactly.
Before, you get like, well, that's not a fair comparison. Well, it is because that's what they traded for him to be.
Dollars are all that matters. That's how they measure their success, and that's how you should measure their output. That's what it's about.
Yep. And so he's done some great things in Kansas City. I think he was so important to the Super Bowl run. But it can't be on that deal. It absolutely cannot because they need cap relief in a bad way. And they've got a couple of easy ways to do it. And the two easiest are Hitch and Clark.
Yeah.
And the thing that makes those guys so easy is you can save a ton of money on those guys. And it really doesn't hurt you that much to cut them loose.
That's what it's all about. I mean, that's why those years are staggered and they're that way. That's what it's for. Flapjack, you were making me laugh a little bit ago, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate this one. I just
watched like a 10-minute compilation of Tombstone's best scenes,
and they're all Val Kilmer.
The vast majority of them, yes, except the whole skin that smoke wagon and see what happens scene with Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh
yeah,
there's that. I will tell you this, and this I don't mean to be. I'm not making fun of Val. Val's had a tough go, but honestly, in order to play the tuberculosis-ridden doc in his dying days, is now not the best time for him to reprise that role. Now that he doesn't have a voice box and he's all beat up, like I want to see him get work, and I'm trying to think of a way that he could do that. Evidently not.
I don't even know what to say to that.
No, I like Val. Val's my favorite part of Heat, just about. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, he's terrific in Heat. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't beat the diner scene, but
okay, yeah.
Don't do this. I can't do this with you right now.
Listen.
Don't be that guy that just while everyone loves More Than a Feeling by Boston, I actually prefer Smoking. Don't be that guy,
brother. If it comes down to it, I gotta push it down.
You are going down. No, it's just such a great scene. It's just like
I think for fun one night we're gonna reenact that just for giggles. Yeah. Old Bob Sutton's in the house. Welcome, Bob.
What up, Bob?
If Kareem Hunt was still on the team, how would this offensive look? Roughly the same.
Sunday would have looked different.
Maybe.
Well, you got McKinnon got tackled on a route to the flat, 1-on-1.
I guess there's that. True.
He should have won that one, and Williams should have scored on that touchdown. That wasn't. Now, to be fair, the linebacker made a great play, but Williams tried to go high. And he should have submarined towards the goal line. And you could see, and I like Williams, you know that. I like to tease you a little bit. I like Williams, but there are some plays where that lack of explosion, that 1/10 of a second, it's a really big deal. It's actually, okay, you remember the show, what was that show? Because this insane football show that was like on ESPN, was it Playmakers? Was it called? It's just this insane show that made football teams look just absolutely nuts. One of the plot lines was an aging running back who was kind of seeing his snaps diminished. He was kind of a legend, but he's kind of nearing the end. And he did this whole combine thing to show the coaches that he still had it physically. and his 40 time was the only thing that was worse, and it dropped by 1/10 of a second. And he said, it's 1/10 of a second. And the coach, he's like, look at this. And he showed another running back hitting a hole, and he froze it every 1/10 of a second, how far he went. And I love that scene, and that's stuck with me just because 1/10 of a second matters at the NFL level. And every now and then, Darrell Williams ends up in a situation like that where it's a race to the corner, it's a race to the sideline, and that 1/10 of a second is such a big deal. So I think Hunt probably gets there, right? And so
they're not different.
Kareem Hunt and Darrell Williams aren't different.
Kareem Hunt, Darrell Williams, and Clyde are all less than 1/10 apart on both their 40 and their 10 splits.
Absolutely, but guys don't play the same in pads.
That's very true. That's very true.
And that's where Kareem Hunt was always. Kareem Hunt kind of had like a version, has a little version of that Patrick Mahomes speed, where he was always just a little bit faster than the guy going after him.
Thanks, Nate.
See,
for me, I think it's more about how he makes contact. I think Kareem powers through players better than any other back that we've seen in Kansas City for the last 10 years.
He's freakish.
Like, we used to say he had contact balance, right? But it's not balance. He has contact power.
Yeah, he's contact strength. He really, it's as though he weighs an extra 35, 40 pounds than he's listed, but moves just the same. Kind of like the way Eric Berry used to hit guys. He was just more solid. You know what I mean? Like they just went through guys. I will say I think Clyde scores on that play too. Just because I just think he's got just a little more scoot in him. Not a ton.
A little bit of duck, right? Yeah.
But you really, I mean, when there's a little more threat there of him doing something shifty. And so, maybe the linebacker can't come screaming in quite as fast. But I would just say those are rare plays though. Yeah. Where the running back's going to move the needle.
It's interesting to me that everything that you pointed out was the run game. Because I think the one thing that Kareem Hunt makes a difference in is being a pass catching back.
Well, that's what I mean. That was a catch out of the backfield in the flat. He's just so natural with it.
Yeah.
Which it's interesting against Green Bay. How many targets did the backs get? It was a little more than.
I will tell you in a second.
Ooh, I like it. But it was just something I noticed when I was reviewing Mahomes' film. People have been, it was driving me nuts after watching the film. Everyone like, Mahomes needs to take what's there. It's like he was checking down all day against Green Bay.
8 targets between the 3 backs.
Now that is a game where it's like that type of game, that type of defense, that type of whatever. That's why you draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he was hurt. Yeah. And that was his game. That was his chance to hey, he broke a couple tackles multiple times, move the sticks. They lost a couple drives because of that. And that just that was his chance. But it is interesting if you're going to see that moving forward, because it wasn't just checkdowns necessarily either. On both of those plays, they had run a little rub route there you actually have your running back as your first option there, which it's driving me nuts. It's like them running a bunch of power and gap stuff now that Clyde isn't in there. It's like, where was this 4 weeks ago? Right. You
guys are like ships in the night here passing.
Yeah, and you know what's going to happen? He's going to get healthy, and they're going to go back to outside zone, and I'm just sitting there like, you can see it too. We're back to ourselves. Oh wait, let's go back. Let's run the stretch. I know, and Clyde's going to be in the huddle going, guys, did you not watch me at LSU? All we ran was gap, and I'm great at it. Oh, that just drives me crazy.
MT, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Post-game show, Pume. Is that Puma? I don't know. But maybe I was overly optimistic. I'm not sure if you mean our post-game show or if I was just hemming and hawing too much. But we'll see what happens this next week. We will be live again. Even though it's a Sunday night, you guys, I'm going to do a short live afterwards. So be prepared. And then we'll do the regular Q&A on Monday night.
Big game.
Brother Rick, thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
I, for one, would like to see Mike Hughes return punts instead of Hardman. McCullough's not the speed, has the speed, but not the juke moves. I agree with you.
I'd love to see Hughes returning punts and kicks. I mean, he's not. He really shouldn't be out there that often on defense at this point.
I mean, quite frankly, it's worked out the way that I knew that it would. I think you were on the same boat. That the top 3 cornerbacks on this roster have always been Snead, Ward, and Fenton.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they pushed him out there for some reason. I'm not sure quite what it was. Maybe Fenton was having something that we didn't quite realize. But now in this diminished role at corner, he absolutely should be handling all the kick work. Because I agree with you, brother Rick. He's got a talent for it.
He's got a talent for it, and he always gets positive yardage. He always gets 5 to 10 yards, which doesn't sound like a ton, but on punt returns, sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And Hardman's got the yips with his hands.
Yeah.
I mean,
I will give him credit though, like you said, especially defeating press man, especially not his thing. But on the last drive again, he did make a nice play. And
that was a tough play.
It was. So like I agree with you. Like there's something going on with his concentration or however he's catching it. But yeah, I want to give him a little credit when he deserves it too. It may not be that often, but when he deserves it, I want to use it.
He definitely that was a big play. And that last drive was a big drive too, where it was kind of like, hey, it's time to get it done. And you know what? They did.
And at the end of the day, winning ugly is winning. So I don't care.
Yep.
I'll be frustrated, but
yep, we've got 2 weeks in a row of winning ugly, and now I would really love to see a non-ugly win. Like I'd really like to see, like, you know, I'd just love to see a boat race the Raiders. And the Raiders are a great opponent for this. I mean, they've had a couple of more. The Packers are a really good team. They were without Rodgers. They lost a couple guys to injury relatively early in the game. They could get away with playing a certain way. The Raiders are a good team this year. They just lost to the Giants, which was weird. But
yeah, I found that weird as well. And that brings me to a couple of things. But I will say this, William. Bill has a good question. The one thing that might slow them down is this right tackle position, because I don't think anybody but Wiley's going to be available. And for those of you that are waiting for Prince Teguinago to step forward and claim his spot, that's not happening, folks.
If it were gonna happen this year, it would have happened by now.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anything about Kyle Long. I've had a lot of people ask me. It's great that he's practicing again, because that could be good.
Right, but he's not activated yet.
He's not activated. Although I don't know the rules to this. We need Matt Derrick here with us. Could they activate him still?
They still could. Saturday's the deadline, but you could practice for 3 weeks before you get activated. After that time frame, the Saturday before the third week, they will have to activate him,
right?
Or they will have to send him to permanent IR for the season,
right? So I mean, so both him and Clyde are in that situation where we're not 100% sure. I think Kyle Long, if he's healthy, would be a better start at right tackle.
And I kind of feel like that too.
Yeah,
but I just haven't seen him, even move around to know.
Right.
So I'm a little.
Well, and that's, I mean, dude's bound to be rusty. I mean, he was already coming back from a long hiatus. And so there's questions there. Wiley actually, okay, he had one really bad snap.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a couple, because he had a couple of run snaps. You could see a big difference between like him and Remmers and Niang in the run game. And honestly, Remmers is a step down in the run game as opposed to Niang, in my opinion. I think Remmers might be a little more consistent pass pro right now, but in the run game, you could see it. He really just had one really bad snap. And Gary's a good player. Overall, he did all right. I mean,
and he was super rusty, so let's give him credit there. There's still the New Orleans game from last year where he played exceptionally well.
Yeah.
So much so that I was fairly confident in him going into the Super Bowl.
Yep, and that was
I was wrong.
We were wrong. Well, that was a sum of the parts stuff. It was really bad. So we'll kind of see, but that's just something worth noting. Like you said, he was rusty. The thing with him is power-oriented rushers, he's going to do a little bit better against than guys that are trying to come at him with speed.
Right.
And I'm really curious what this week looks like, because the Raiders pass rush has been pretty good this year.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this, I did a deep dive on the stats. It's Crosby that I'm more concerned about, because Crosby's been consistent. And Ngakwe's been good at his height, but he's had a couple of really stinker games too. So the fact that he's not always the same guy is the question here. And this position is going to be the weak point. And Cheeseball, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate the support. Spoiled fan base happens, especially when you waited 50 years to get spoiled. So I'm giving everybody a long leash of being spoiled about it, right? It is struggled.
Just try to. I would just remind yourself, there, cheese ball.
They call me that all the time.
This is supposed to be fun. So just keep that in mind when you're watching it. Enjoy the good moments. Enjoy it because it's supposed to be fun.
It is. It is. And that position isn't going to be fun for the right tackles, whoever it happens to be. Mm-hmm. But that brings us back around to the point of this whole show that we put on the thumbnail and in the top is we both looked at Patrick. Yes. And while, yes, he's going to have to deal with the right tackle situation. The pass rush is going to be a little bit more formidable this week than it was last, in my opinion. I want to know, in your words, I don't want to paraphrase the article, folks. You can find the most recent article of Seth's work here at Seth's Substack.
And this one's unlocked if you want to take a look at it. If you've never read something that I've done before, it's a good one to start with because it involves quarterback charting that I do, which is kind of one of the main things I do, is I chart players to try to figure out what happened beyond the box score. And then I also broke down why every drive failed, the fails to score.
And that, I think, was a pertinent thing in this particular game. But before we get to that portion of it and look at the game as a whole, I only want to suffix this on the last drive because I felt before they had the chance that, hey, we have to go out and perform to lock this game down. Mm-hmm. I felt like they turned around, and Patrick in particular turned around and taking what was there and executing his game plan and doing what he had to do in a number of different ways. I doubt you watched my film breakdown, but what were your takeaways from him in general, and where do you think he's at?
I wanted to watch yours so bad. I did not have a point today. It's been a god-awful day. Otherwise, I would have.
No worries.
So one thing that I noticed, there are two things that I chart that I think would be really relevant to this conversation. Happy feet, which are snaps essentially where the quarterback either bails out of the pocket or moves in a way that, because of panicky feet or whatever, that causes pressure, okay? If you want to think of the exact opposite of that, watch Tom Brady play quarterback, right? Yeah. You don't have to be an athlete to do it well. And then the other thing is missed shots, which people think only means like open guys down the field, but it can be intermediate or shallow. If it's like an open receiver that looks like he's within the progressions that should have been hit and there wasn't a superior option out there, I chart that. I didn't chart a single happy feet snap the entire game. And the offensive line played really well. A lot of credit to them. Green Bay tries to win with power in their pass rush, and that just doesn't fly against Orlando Brown. Mm-hmm. Against power rushers, he's hilarious because they just can't. Yeah. It's just like, oh, that's a really cute bull rush there. Allow me to get you with my 90 feet arms and my 4 million pounds. Yeah, he's just like, oh, God. Is this guy going to try something else? You can't do a long arm against me. My arm's a foot longer than yours, buddy. It was one of his better performances. Mm-hmm. But the one thing is, and I showed this in a couple different clips, Green Bay tried a lot of the things that have caused Mahomes to get a little jittery this year in terms of really wide looping stunts. Because what the teams have found is if you get some chaos in front of Mahomes, even if it's blocked up, he'll start to move. And then if you've got a looping blitzer,
got the late looper,
looper, whether it's a blitzer, stunter, whatever, then boom, there's pressure. And that's hurt him a lot. And there were multiple plays on third downs and others where he was still moving, but his movement was much more contained. That's easily, to me, the biggest takeaway from the entire game. Because if that keeps up, everything else on offense will fall into place.
Yep.
I honestly, watching this video, and I think Dan Harms said this too, I think with everything going exactly the way it did, except Chiefs players making plays they normally make, I think the Chiefs put up 28 to 35 points in that game. Mm-hmm. Because just stuff kept happening. So that was a big thing that I saw with Mahomes. The other thing was, he really was taking what the defense gave him, almost to a fault occasionally, but not really. He was giving guys an opportunity to make plays. Now that's where you kind of have the conversation about guys besides Kelsey and Hill, because you need those guys to make plays. You need them to break a tackle or two. And Green Bay's safeties and linebackers are excellent. Really excellent. They did a great job closing, tackling, finishing. Overall, I thought he did a really good job taking what was there. I didn't see the same hesitation that I saw against Tennessee, especially, and a little bit against the Giants. Although with the Giants, they had stuff covered up a lot better than Tennessee did. In Tennessee, he was just missing guys. He wouldn't pull the trigger. He was against the Giants. He was taking those 3-step drop quick throws. And so that's what I saw. And that's why it drove me nuts after the game. Everyone's like, Mahomes needs to take what's there. And I'm like, you're 2 weeks late.
Because he went deep one time into double coverage instead of hitting Kelsey.
And look, when you watch that play, and I have no interest, everyone's like borderline like Zapruder film on this, one play. Yes, Hardman slowed down a little bit and took a bad angle, and I think he could have or should have caught it. Yes, I think it was probably a little bit of pass interference. But it was first down. I get it. I would have preferred he hit Kelsey. But you can see why he took the shot.
He has to. In order to get back to what they do, he has to at least attempt it. And here's the thing. That's on Hardman. Because like you said, he did slow down. And Patrick's been screaming at him since his first training camp. You have to run through every dang route, period. And he still doesn't do it.
Hardman has definitely suffered the ire of Mahomes more than once.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because we'll see Hill or Kelsey make mistakes and you don't see the same reaction. Yeah. I'm curious with Hardman, maybe he's just kind of a water off a duck's back kind of guy.
Seems like it.
And it is what it is. But so that's all my takeaways on Mahomes. That deep shot to Hardman probably should have been completed. The one to Hill, a bunch of people are saying they look like Hill slowed down. I guess you see it a little, not as blatantly, because Hill takes great angles to the ball. That was a really close. That one was one I was like, could Hill have caught that if he laid out? Because that was like a yard off. And those shots are important. Mm-hmm. Even if they don't connect, those shots are important. And we are, one of those connects. And we're talking about this game completely differently because it adds 50, 60 yards, maybe a touchdown. I mean, completely alters the stats. So I get it. With Kelsey that wide open in the middle of the field, I think I prefer that because it's not like that was like a check down for 5 yards. That was a 20-yard gain right there.
Right.
But the very next snap, he hit him in the same part of the field with maybe room to run because the defender kind of went for the ball a little. And I think Kelsey catches that and just keeps running.
Yeah.
So you can't really hold that against Mahomes. So anyway, I've said a lot about what I took away. I value your insight and opinion. So hopefully you've got something where you're like, Seth, you're crazy and you're wrong.
You're not wrong. We saw very similar things. Terry Dunlap, thank you for your support. I didn't see another comment from you, but I'm going to hope to find one. And you echoed something that I was very interested in because I too did not think that last ball to Tyreek on the last drive where Patrick did roll out and got nearly to the sideline. I also did not grade that as happy feet. I thought that he hung in there while he could. And then when he actually felt the pressure, that's when he left the pocket. And I was perfectly comfortable with that. I'm glad that we see it the same way. And folks, we don't talk about this before we get on here. So that's confirmation.
No, we didn't talk about that play. I didn't chart that as a happy feet snap. It was about as close. But what I think he saw was McKinnon was engaged in his second effort, which was a heck of a block by Jerick McKinnon, taking on a blitzer. But I think he saw that. I mean, you can't count on McKinnon to continue to win that block.
Right.
And so I think he saw that, and he saw Kelsey wasn't open. And so really, if you pause it as Mahomes starts to bail, McKinnon finally starts to lose the block. And so it was an appropriately timed thing. And yeah, sure, the defense was looking for it, but he also saw that Kelsey wasn't open, and everyone else he had for the most part was on the right side of the field.
The only thing that I will say about that part, though, is just like you said with the Hardman thing, and on that play it was Kelsey, like he does seem to be lingering on his primary read too long, longer than he has in the past.
You know what's interesting is Kelsey eventually does get open that play.
Right. But initially he's bracketed.
Yeah. Well, he's not just bracketed. The guy literally pressed him for 10 full yards down the field.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you're the Chiefs, you got to start sending this stuff to the NFL. And maybe it affects things, maybe it doesn't, right? But it's like Kelsey is being played more physically than any other player in the league.
Yeah.
And it's because it's the only thing that works.
It is.
It's frustrating.
Bill Bradley, will the Raiders stick with cover 3 against KC, or will they copycat the league and go with too high shell and a 4-man rush? I think they're going to mix it up. And I think also what you're going to see them start in a 2-man shell and give them that look, and then they're going to rotate to their normal 3 deep.
And it's worth noting that you can do various forms of the same protect the deep ball with cover 3.
Yeah.
I mean,
3 deep is perfectly legit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't have men corners running down. You can hand off underneath zones, and that'll work just as well if you can't pick apart those zones.
Absolutely. And so I would expect them, because you remember when the Chiefs were going into the Super Bowl against the Niners, and then thereafter, the conversation was, well, maybe cover 3 is the secret. Because there's always been some secret of everything. It hasn't really just been this cover 2 shell stuff. There are shot plays. The Rams take shot plays all the time, and people play cover 2 against them more than they do against the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is they're running 2 deep right now for the most part. And that's just the way that it is. And until Hardman and I don't think he will, it really has to be either Robinson snapping back a little bit to what he's been able to do in previous years, which isn't a ton, but it's something, right? It's a little bit more. And that they're missing that, I think, this year. And that's the reason they looked at Odell. I think Odell would have been a great addition to the offense. I think I'm sure he'll get fed in with the Rams offense if he stays healthy. I think he'll do himself a lot of good there. I think the Chiefs would have been a perfect place to go to, because if you look at the film, you see the Chiefs offense starting to get a little more on the upswing,
mm-hmm.
but he could come in and I was the missing link.
Yeah, right.
And that's get yourself paid. I fixed Patrick Mahomes. And he would say it too.
You just got to get that same blonde haircut. It's fine.
No, this is a huge game.
This Sunday. Is a huge game. Bill, thank you for your support. Go ahead. I don't want to throw you off.
It's great stuff. Makes you look smart in front of me. Hey, I really appreciate that. That is, I really hope people read and enjoy. But the favorite thing that I get told sometimes, my favorite thing, is when someone tells me that I helped them enjoy the game more, or that I helped them notice something that they hadn't noticed before. Because that's one of my favorite things is I see something that I hadn't noticed before, and you see how it all kind of interconnects. That's so much fun because it makes you enjoy the game so much more. It's such a detail-oriented game.
It really is. I've had a number of people this week say about, hey, I don't notice these things live. And it's like, you guys don't feel bad that you don't see some of this stuff live. I don't either. That's why we have to go back and watch the all 22.
Absolutely. And even if I'm there, especially if I'm live at the game, I mean, it's impossible. So I just ball watch. And I have an all 22 view because I'm at the game, but I can't do it. It robs the fun. And also I'm just not good at it. I'm talking to people that played at a high level or coached at a high level.
You're always talking. When you're at a game, you're always talking.
There are a lot of people. There's some people who can chart stuff live during games. And, I was talking to Jeff Schwartz once, and he said he can generally look at all 5 linemen at once on a snap and figure out who won and who lost. And I'm like, I can't do that. I got to look one at a time. And then I got to check the other guys before him. So people shouldn't feel bad about that. It takes time. You have to go back and look, because the things that I thought Mahomes played maybe okay against the Packers, just went back to having a bad game for him rather than just a bad game. And it wasn't until I went back and watched the film, I was like, you know what? He was fine. He was good. Everything else around him failed. Well, besides the O-line. The O-line was good. So, but seriously though, this Raiders game, the more I think about it, the more nervous I am for this game, because this is like they've won a couple of games in a row, but they weren't against terrific opponents. Now they're up against a team that, if they beat the Raiders, depending on what else happens on Sunday, they could take back the division lead.
Yeah, they can go from 4th to 1st.
And that's huge. I mean, that's huge for a ton of reasons. But it's also, if you go to 5-5, you've kind of hit that point where you're one loss away from needing to run the table to even have a shot at the playoffs this year.
You're absolutely right.
And that's where, so it also lowers the pressure on the Cowboys game to an extent.
True.
Still a really important game.
Yeah.
Because going into the bye, 7-4 versus 6-5 is a really big deal. But you really, they need to try to stave off that fifth loss for as long as possible. Because once you got that fifth loss, you basically got to run the table if you want to assure yourself a playoff spot.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. That's the hard part is you have to account for, you have to have the expectation there's another loss out there.
Mhm.
I honestly, I think that the Raiders are a little artificially, their schedule is really easy early. I was really unimpressed last week, and
Yeah.
it's going to be tough. Like, I feel like these are teams going in two different directions. And if you guys want to hear my actual prediction, it's on Locked On Chiefs tomorrow's show. It'll be here on YouTube at lunchtime, but it's up on the podcast here in about 3 minutes. So you can grab that. Are you surprised at just how well Fenton's doing? Spencer, thank you for pointing this out. I didn't realize they had him that high. Again, PFF grades, grain of salt, but Seth, are you surprised at the way Fenton's been playing?
I'm surprised he's been playing this well. But you and I were talking about him when the season started, saying this really is a guy that deserves to be on the field most of the time. He's not a great athlete, but he's a really good tackler. He's very physical, and he's also physical in how he plays. He's got excellent ball skills, and he is extremely smart in how he plays zones. When he's in, you don't see like blown coverages. I can't think of a time I saw a blown coverage and it was Fenton. He does a great job with those, and it makes such a huge difference in terms of keeping gaps from getting too large. And that was something they were struggling with. That's another thing that you see on film. I understand Jordan Love got blitzed into oblivion and all that stuff. The back end coverage, that wasn't affected by Aaron Rodgers being out. They did a great job by and large on the back end. And
I don't know how they did it, but you guys have heard me complain that Ward is not a number one corner for the last 4 years. He's not. He's still not. He's a very good number two, though, and we've said that. And I thought he and Snead and their aggression against Davante Adams was the key to this. And I don't know what got into them, but all of a sudden they played like a team that can play aggressive. They can play like that every week if they want.
Right.
The question is going to be, can they sustain it?
Matthew did a nice job on Adams, too, on multiple snaps.
True.
Lined up against him in the slot, which is not something most safeties can do.
True. I expected of him, though. I was a little more surprised about Snead and Ward having that success.
For sure.
Bill, thank you. We're almost out of time, guys. We're going to hit these couple of super chats here. Once CH can jump cut and accelerate like normal again, any chance the Chiefs commit to a gap duo for good, they will likely watch old college games. Maybe. You hope so. Did they watch LSU?
Well, you'd hope so, but their use with him has been so mystifying to me. And it's not as though, especially in the pass catching realm, it's not as though when he's gotten targets, he's looked like the player he looked like in college. And so it's one of those things where I don't understand why you didn't see the opportunity and nature of those targets go up, because it looked like he was doing well with it. And it's the same with gap and duo. I mean, when they run this stuff, that's what he's good at.
And not a little bit. It's not like, oh, he's okay. Like, but he's good.
Yeah, he's really good at it. And he's not, I don't even know if I would call him average on that stretch stuff to the sideline. And I mean, I think maybe you could call him average. The line matters a lot there.
Yeah.
And that's part of the point of those types of runs is you really kind of create a situation where it's much more about the line than the running back. And it's a one cut and go thing. And this is just not the line to do that with. Humphrey and Tooney certainly, but not anyone else.
Yeah.
And it requires just a certain amount of timing. So I'd hope they'd go back to it. It makes so much sense. But so much of what they've done this year hasn't made a ton of sense to me. And I try to defer to the coaches because obviously they know so much more than you and me and everyone in this chat combined. But some of the decisions have been weird. How long it took them to really, it took us till week 9 to where Willie Gay Jr. was the linebacker that got the most snaps.
Good Lord.
And even then he was still only on the field for 60% of the snaps.
I know.
And there were multiple plays where Neiman's the one guy out there. It's like,
when you still feel that your best option in the third down package nickel is Neiman and Sorensen, you're not looking at the film.
And that's absolutely like you could take That's driving me nuts. With the specific roles that they use Sorensen for in those sets, you can't convince me Armani Watts can't do that.
Yeah.
He can blitz or play man coverage. And you know who can't play man coverage? Sorensen.
But dang, he's good at blitzing, though.
Yeah, he's a good blitzer.
Yeah, just do not back away from the line of scrimmage.
And then that's the problem is they can't just blitz him because then it's such an obvious tell. But I mean, crap, he's an obvious tell when he's not blitzing.
I was going to say, he could stand still and man a zone right there. I'm just,
right.
You know what I mean?
But I mean, the fact that it's not Willie Gay Jr., at least in those sets, is still driving me crazy. And that's why with Clyde, I'm not sure what they'll do. I'm genuinely not. I haven't seen them really go out of their way to get Gordan more involved. Like I said, he looks a little slow to me, but there's still things you can do. I mean, he looks just as fast as Jody Fortson, and they found a way to get him the ball a little bit. Although Fortson, I think that one hurt more than people realize, because I think you would have seen him. I think by now, and yes, I'm a Jody Fortson homer. I get it. I think by now he'd be getting 6 or 7 targets a game. I think
he'd be the third target right now. I'm saying it right now.
And so that's a shame. And I think he's got a shot at it next year. I think he's going to come back better. I'm excited for the guy. But that was a bummer of an injury.
I get a lot more angry these days than I used to. Stevie, I love you, and thank you for the support. Big Great Assault when we like them, and right on, or when we don't like them, and right on when we do. You have a funny way of putting that. I'm going to need you to expand on that for the huddle tomorrow, please. I will look at them, but I generally toss them out regardless of whether they reinforce what I saw on film or not.
Right. I mean, I'm going to look at them if it's a player that I've never looked at before, because I know they've got someone that did watch, and that grade is based on that. Okay, fair enough. That's one guy's opinion on this player. And I think that's better than nothing. It's better than looking at the stat sheet.
Yeah, it is, because that is just, there's ghosts in there that you can't even find. Right. And you don't know if they're influencing you or not. Aaron, thank you for pointing this out. Guys, Stevie does a great job. If you haven't seen him yet, he's on the Rogue Head Huddle. That'll be on Fridays. You can also talk to him in the Discord. If you become a member, you can see Aaron's picks pool videos, which are great because nobody can hide on those things. I love it. And that also gets you into the Discord. So if you want to hit the membership, underneath Seth's microphone under there, it'll say join. If you're on a mobile, it'll be next to the little icon for RGR. When you do, join as a rookie or above, and then email me at this address that Aaron has kindly posted in the chat here at rgrpodcast@gmail.com. Then I can get you invited. That is the only way that I can do it, because the integration between YouTube and Discord is now broken, has been for a couple of months, and I've been hitting my head against the wall, so it is what it is. Let's see here. Anything else? Yes, another shout out. One more for Seth Substack. You can also use this other cute little bit.ly that I never use anymore.
Oh, the bit.ly/Seth really hates money.
Yep. He's
bits, I know bits are supposed to be shorter.
To dollars. Yeah, I know. Isn't that the point of them? I don't know. We'll have to talk to Josh about that. Great show. Thank you, Aaron. Excellent questions. And hey, Kingdom, Rogue Nation, I'm glad you guys are here. You guys always ask great questions. And thank you for allowing us to kind of roll with this show the way that we do it.
Oh, you almost missed it.
Oh, what did I? No, I'm here. I'm looking. I always check before I shut a stream down.
Backseat driving. I'm putting my head over the backseat. It looks like you're doing 63 and a 60.
Sounds like Seth knows how to drive these days, huh, folks? Maybe Seth's gonna be in charge of driving here. We're gonna find out. Yeah, walked right into that landmine, didn't you? Yeah, I ain't going back to prison.
Need
bro.
To get getting more snaps to get him going. I think if I would like to see it, but I would say that after being kind of a training camp star, he really didn't show up in preseason either. And preseason is a terrible time to gauge the team, but it's a good way to gauge guys in pads, in live action. And Gray just hasn't shown. There's a reason Fortson, he just hasn't quite shown that maybe he's got that skill set they were hoping he had. Although I think he's become a better blocker.
I was just going to say, he stood out a couple of times this last week, and I think that can help. I honestly, if you're not going to throw flares out of the backfield to the backs, if you're not going to do any of that, get a few routes for him as an H. Yeah. I won't take it for Patrick. He had him wide open on that rollout to end the game the other day. but Tyreek was there. There's a trust factor there. I get all that.
Yeah.
But I think he and Gordon have to have a couple of dedicated concepts of getting them the ball.
Right.
You gotta water the plants to get them to grow, right? You need a third option in the pass game. You got to make it happen.
You got to at least give them a shot to show that they can get there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Kenneth, thank you as always. A lot of great contributors. We thank you guys, every last one of you. Seth, I hope that your week improves and that you get to relax a little bit.
We'll see how it goes.
Everybody, enjoy your weekend. We certainly will. Sunday night, it's going to be fun. Prime time. I always love when those games are on. I'll be on really late with the breakdown, so don't miss that. You all have a good weekend. We'll talk to you next time.